My Lords, as set out in the King's speech, we will establish legislation to ensure the safe development of AI models by introducing targeted requirements on companies developing the most powerful AI systems. We will be consulting on these proposals in due course. This will build on our ongoing commitment to make sure that the UK's regulators have the expertise and resources to effectively regulate AI in their respective domains.
My Lords, individuals having loan applications rejected off the back of AI decisions, creatives having their works ingested by Gen AI with no consent or remuneration. Wouldn't the Minister agree we need economy-wide, society-wide AI legislation and regulation for the benefit of citizen, consumer, creatives, for innovators and investors, for all our AI futures?
Thank you. It's an important area and one where we have huge opportunities for growth. There is definitely the need for regulators to become upskilled in the ability to look at AI and to understand how it impacts their areas. And that's the reason that we created the Regulatory Innovation Office announced last week, to make sure that there are the capabilities and expertise in sector-dependent regulators. We also believe that there is a need for a regulator for there's regulation for the most advanced models, which are general purpose and, of course, cross many different areas as well.
So, my Lords, notwithstanding the need for sector-specific approaches and expertise, does my noble friend agree that public confidence and constitutional legitimacy requires primary legislation and sooner rather than later?
The reason that we're establishing the Prospect of an AI Act is to look at those models which are the ones which are at the biggest forefront and general use, and carry with them specific both opportunities and risks that require that specific legislation. It is not the case that that is true for every aspect of the application of AI in every single area, much of which can be covered by existing regulation and can be dealt with regulators provided they are appropriately reinforced with skills, capabilities and the knowledge required.
Lords, if a photograph tells 1,000 words, an AI-generated image can tell 1,000 lies. As a photographer, I am concerned about altered or manipulated imagery in journalism and on social media. Generative AI images used in journalism will soon be good enough to blur our ability to discern truth from fiction. So I ask the Minister, what is the government doing to support a move to a standard of authenticity signatures on real images so that all photographs can be quickly verified as either real or AI generated?
Thank you. This again is a very important area and one where there are rapid technological advances. Watermarking to enable understanding of what is original and what is not, and indeed what component of originality is in any finished product, I think is an important development which is not there yet but is on the way. In the meantime, of course, there are specific provisions in the online safety bill to make sure that the most egregious examples of this are caught and indeed are illegal.
My Lord.
The government has pledged to recalibrate trade relations with the EU. However, the new EU AI legislation is much more prescriptive than the regulation proposed by the government. How will the government ensure that UK-based AI organisations with operations in the EU or which deploy AI into the EU will be aligned with EU regulation?
As the Noble Lord points out, the EU regulation has gone in a somewhat different direction in terms of taking a very broad approach, not a sector-specific approach. In contrast, the US looks as though it's going down the similar sort of route to the one that we are taking. There is, of course, going to be a need for interoperability globally because this is a global technology. I think there will be consultation and interactions with both of those domains as we consider the introduction of the AI Act, and we're starting an extensive consultation process over the next few months.
My Lords, my Lords, my Lords, my Lords.
Conservative benches,
My Lords, I'm somewhat concerned by the Noble Lord, the Minister's reference to regulating the most powerful and general purpose. models, because I fear that that is a pathway to closing down markets and preventing access to challenger firms. But what I want to ask the Noble Lord in the context of copyright, which, as he knows, is of concern to all content creators, but certainly to the publishers, what mandatory mechanism the government is considering, or is it considering a mandatory mechanism to ensure transparency so that those publishers that choose to opt out their data from the training purposes are able to do so?
I've just, in passing, referenced the first part. Even Eric Schmidt at the meeting on Monday, the investment summit, made the point that some sort of guardrails are required, some sort of certainty for business in order to be able to grow those most important models. So I think there is a demand for something there, and that is what we want to try and get right. It is not right to leave nothing as these models progress. So I'm sorry, I've completely forgotten this. Transparency. Yes, the question of intellectual property and transparency is important. We're consulting widely on this with the creative industries and with others. And indeed, in my own review, which I did for the previous government when I was in my post as Government Chief Scientific Advisor, I made the very clear point that we need to distinguish between the inputs to these models and what is required for intellectual property control there, and the outputs of the model, which goes back to the question about watermarking and understanding what component of the output derived from which part of the input.
One area of AI technology that's been used a lot without regulation for many years and has been exposed as having some quite severe flaws is that of facial recognition. It's been used a lot by police forces all over Britain, and it clearly has caused a lot of confusion and made a lot of mistakes. Is that going to be one area that the Noble Lord will be looking at specifically for regulation?
That is an area, of course, that comes under several other parts of regulation already. And it's also an area where there are massive changes in the way these models perform. So that if one looks at GPT-4 versus GPT-3, I know it's not facial recognition, but it gives an indication of the types of advances. It's about twice as good now as it was a year ago. And so I think these things are moving fast, and there is indeed a need to understand exactly how facial recognition technology is valid and where it has problems in recognition.
The supply chain for the development of the more advanced AI systems is in almost every case highly global in nature. And that means that it becomes quite straightforward for AI developers to offshore their activities from any jurisdiction whose regulations they might prefer not to follow. This being the case, does the government agree that the regulations for AI development, as distinguished mostly from use, are going to have to be global in nature? And if the government agrees with that, how is this reflected in its plans for AI regulation going forward?
I think the Noble Lord makes an important point. This is going to be global. There is no question about it, and therefore there needs to be some degree of interoperability between different regions in terms of the regulations put in place. At the moment, as I said, the two most advanced is that the US is the biggest AI nation in the world and is developing a regulation along similar lines to ours, we believe. The EU, of course, is the most regulated place in the world for AI, and we need to work out in consultation over the next months how to make sure that we work out where the areas of interoperability will lie.
My Lords, would my noble friend the Minister agree that any advisory committees on regulation of AI should include smaller companies involved in the sector and also representation from the regions?
This is an area where there was something like 100 new startups in the last year alone. We have something like 4,000 small companies. It's an area where small companies are critically important and must be involved in the discussion. And it's worth remembering that some of the enormous companies were small companies not very long ago in this space. It's moving fast. And if I may also take this opportunity of saying how fantastic it is that in our own country we had a Nobel Prize awarded to Demis Hassabis for the extraordinary work and his colleague John Jumper at the DeepMind.
Lord the Minister's response to my noble friend Viscount Camrose. I'm so pleased that the government is taking advantage of this Brexit opportunity. Last week I got a new iPhone, first time in 10 years, and it comes with an Apple intelligence function, which is not available on the iPhones released on the same day in the EU. Will the noble Lord the Minister confirm that we have no plans to follow Brussels in imposing needless regulation that is hostile to growth and innovation?
We are very minded of the opportunity of AI and have created, or the report by Matt Clifford coming out shortly on AI opportunities. We want to see this as a growth industry in this country, and as I said, we are developing in the AI Act an approach which is only about those general models, not a sector-specific regulation, thereby differing from the EU at the current moment.